30 dumbest old car prototypes that should have never existed. The 20th century was a decade of crazy ideas and bold experiments in the automotive industry. Have you ever thought that a car could look like a snail, a mobile bathtub, or even a giant swallowing another car? Or a car that could be equipped with a tiny nuclear reactor right in its trunk? Today, let's take a look back at some of the most ridiculous car models that you probably wouldn't want to see rolling down the streets at all. Aurora 1957. This car was conceived from the passion of Reverend Alfred Juliano, a priest who switched to car design with no other goal than to create a completely accident-proof car. That idea was admirable, but the result was a monstrous, bulky behemoth with a look that perhaps only its creator could truly love. The Aurora was equipped with countless timeless safety features far beyond what the technology of the time could dream of. It had a thickly padded dashboard, sturdy seatbelts, a rigid roll cage, side impact bars, and even a collapsible steering column to minimize injury. However, all those advanced safety features came at the cost of an incredibly ugly appearance and almost zero practicality. The front of the car was bizarrely large, initially intended to safely lift pedestrians in the event of a collision, or perhaps to simply terrify them into running the other way. Its bubble shape gave the car the aerodynamics of a brick, completely unsuitable for road travel. Only one prototype of the Aurora was built, and it quickly faded into oblivion, serving as a reminder that sometimes even the best ideas need reasonable execution. Nissan S-Cargo. Imagine a car whose name says it all. S-Cargo, a pun on the French word for snail. And true to its name, this car was actually designed to look exactly like a snail. The S-Cargo was part of Nissan's strange Pike Factory series, a range of retro cars inspired by classic designs but distinguished by their eccentricity. This car was a confusing blend of a delivery truck and some cartoon character, with a body that was both square and oddly curved. It looked like a Pixar character rejected from some animated movie. Its tiny 1.5-liter engine only made this car slower than most bicycles, completely unsuitable for modern urban driving. The S-Cargo's styling was so bizarre that even Nissan employees probably questioned their life choices when this product came out. Dymaxion Car, 1933. This masterpiece was the brainchild of Buckminster Fuller, an ambitious inventor. The Dymaxion car was envisioned as the future of transportation. A teardrop-shaped three-wheeler steered by its rear wheel, looking more like a submarine on roller skates than a conventional car. The Dymaxion's goals were truly ambitious. It promised comfortable seating for 11 passengers, astonishing fuel efficiency, and even had the potential for vertical takeoff. That's right, the inventor even planned for this car to have vertical takeoff and landing capabilities. However, in reality, the Dymaxion was a nightmare on the road. With only one wheel at the back for steering, the car swerved like a drunken shopping cart, making it a veritable death trap in traffic. It couldn't even handle a sharp turn without causing danger. The Dymaxion car, despite its grand ambitions, is a prime example of an idea that was ahead of its time but failed miserably in execution and practicality. Ferrari 512, Modulo 1970. Ferrari, a brand famous for powerful and sleek sports cars, sometimes has its moments of wandering off course. The Ferrari 512 S Modulo 1970 is a prime example of that deviation. Designed by the renowned Pininfarina, the Modulo was a futuristic, wedge-shaped design that looked exactly like an alien spacecraft. With an ultra-low body, lower than your average coffee table, a bubble-like glass canopy that slid forward instead of traditional doors, and covered wheels for improved aerodynamics, this car sounds incredibly impressive. However, the biggest problem was that it barely functioned as a normal car. The extremely low body made any speed bump its number one enemy, threatening to damage the undercarriage. Hidden wheels meant you couldn't drive properly without scraping everything around. And what's worse, despite being equipped with a massive V12 engine, it had almost no ventilation system, meaning the engine would overheat almost instantly if pushed too hard. Lancia Stratos HF0. This wedge-shaped prototype looked like a spaceship and was designed purely for shock value. The Lancia Stratos HF0 was a mere 33 inches tall, which is shorter than most people's waists and even shorter than some regular go-karts. The most peculiar thing was that it had no doors or roof. Instead, the entire windshield would flip up like a fighter jet cockpit, and you had to slide your feet in as if you were crawling into a high-tech coffin. Visibility from inside this car was extremely poor, and the interior space was so cramped it could be compared to a glove compartment, with the steering wheel almost touching the windshield, driving the Stratus HF0 was like trying to control a car from inside a shoebox. Although never mass-produced, the Lancia Stratus HF0 was a bold design experiment, and some of its styling cues were incorporated into the actual Lancia Stratos, a car that later dominated rally racing. Have you ever seen a car model so strange that it made you question reality? Share your story in the comments. Cadillac Cimarron. In the early 80s, Cadillac made one of the worst brand decisions in automotive history. They took a cheap Chevy Cavalier compact, slapped a little leather on the seats, attached a Cadillac badge, and declared it a luxury car. The Cimarron was so mediocre that it almost completely ruined Cadillac's reputation. Although marketed as a European-style luxury sports sedan, the Cimarron was not luxurious at all. Beneath its thin Cadillac branding, it was still just a Chevy with a weak 88-horsepower four-cylinder engine, making it slower than some minivans. This was Detroit's first attempt to create a European-style luxury sports sedan, but the first version came with more flaws than promises. Walter C. Jerome, survival car, 1958. This car was the brainchild of Walter C. Jerome, and it was expected to become the ultimate accident-proof car. Jerome had the right idea. At the time, cars were like mobile metal boxes, without seatbelts or any safety features. He designed the front engine compartment to be completely separate from the passenger compartment to protect occupants from the engine crushing into the front seats in a head-on collision. However, the implementation of this idea was completely ridiculous. The driver's seat was not in the main body. Instead, it was placed in a rotating turret mounted above the engine. The driver sat in their own small compartment, completely separated from passengers. As you might guess, the survival car never made it past the prototype stage. Only one was built, and it quickly faded into oblivion, but not without leaving its mark as one of the strangest safety cars ever conceived. Briggs & Stratton Hybrid, 1980. What happens when a company famous for lawnmower engines decides to build a hybrid car? You get the Briggs & Stratton Hybrid 1980, a vehicle so strange it felt like someone glued a lawnmower to a science experiment. This quirky car was a six-wheeled hybrid, powered by a combination of a tiny 694 cubic centimeter, two-stroke lawnmower engine, and an electric motor. In theory, it was supposed to be fuel efficient and environmentally friendly, but in reality, it was a mobile engineering nightmare. First, the six-wheel configuration made absolutely no sense. Two of those wheels didn't even provide traction, they were just there for stability. And then there was the performance, or rather the lack thereof. The gasoline engine only produced 18 horsepower, meaning this car's top speed was somewhere between a slow walk and a gentle breeze. AMC Gremlin. Sometimes a car's name tells you everything you need to know, and for the AMC Gremlin, that's certainly true. What happens when AMC, the company behind the bubble-shaped Pacer, had another brilliant idea in the 70s? They took a regular sedan, chopped off the back, and called it a compact car. That's literally how the Gremlin was designed. Instead of creating a brand new car from scratch, AMC took their existing Hornet sedan, cut off the trunk, and called it a day. The Gremlin was supposed to compete with European compacts, but it was unbalanced, clumsily designed, and built like a tin can. To make matters worse, AMC even offered a V8 engine option, which gave it plenty of power but no way to handle it. So you'd have a small, short wheelbase car that was very prone to spinning out of control. Buick Centurion, 1956. Buick had some pretty wild ideas in the 1950s, but nothing was as absurd as the 1956 Centurion. On the surface, this car looked amazing. A sleek jet-age coupe with a wraparound windshield, a bubble top, and aircraft-inspired styling. But then, Buick decided to go one step too far by completely eliminating rear-view mirrors and replacing them with a rear-mounted camera. That's right. Decades before modern rear-view cameras existed, Buick thought putting a small TV screen inside a car in the 50s was a great idea. Except, of course, it wasn't. The technology at the time was primitive, unreliable, and completely unnecessary for a car that had windows anyway. Among these bizarre designs, which car made you exclaim, "Who thought of this?" Share your thoughts. Ford Nucleon, 1958. In the 1950s, people were obsessed with the idea that nuclear energy was the answer to everything. Nuclear power, nuclear planes, and yes, nuclear cars. The idea was to put a reactor on wheels and call it a day. The Ford Nucleon 1958 was a concept car powered by an actual nuclear reactor. Ford envisioned a future where you could drive 5,000 miles on a single nuclear charge. This sounds impressive until you realize you'd be driving around with a miniature Chernobyl strapped to your trunk. Fortunately, this car never made it past the concept stage, because frankly, the world wasn't ready for everyday drivers to casually dispose of nuclear waste in the 1950s. Vector W8. The Vector W8 was expected to be America's answer to Ferrari and Lamborghini, a jet-inspired supercar capable of beating all rivals. However, it turned out to be one of the most overhyped and underperforming disasters in supercar history. The W8 packed serious power, a monstrous 6.0-liter twin-turbo V8 engine producing 625 horsepower, capable of reaching 242 miles per hour. But here's the problem. It barely worked. Vector was a small company with big ambitions, but almost no practical experience in mass-producing cars. This led to terrible reliability, nightmare handling, and countless electrical problems, making it more likely to break down than break speed records. The company produced fewer than 20 units before going bankrupt. The W8's interior looked like something out of a bad movie. It had a cockpit-style dashboard, a myriad of buttons, and a complex digital instrument cluster, even for the 90s. Vector M12. If the Vector W8 was a failed supercar experiment, then the Vector M12 was an even more embarrassing sequel. After the original Vector company collapsed in the early 90s, it was bought by an Indonesian company, which thought the best way to revive the brand was to steal Lamborghini parts, mix them with terrible engineering, and hope for the best. The result was a car that looked fast but performed like a dying spacecraft. The M12 borrowed its V12 engine from the Lamborghini Diablo, but instead of turning it into a true supercar, Vector encased it in a bulky, heavier, uglier, and slower fiberglass body than the original Diablo. The M12 suffered from terrible overheating issues, unreliable electrical systems, and an interior that resembled a rejected arcade game. Only 14 units were produced before Vector shut down once again. Bricklin SV1. When a company puts the words safety vehicle in its product name, you'd think it would at least be safe. But the Bricklin SV1 was not. Designed by Malcolm Bricklin, this Canadian-made sports car was supposed to be a revolutionary blend of speed and safety. It had unique gull-wing doors, impact-absorbing bumpers, and a fiberglass body. All sounds impressive until you realize that this car had zero reliability, terrible build quality, and an interior that looked like a plastic toy. The gull-wing doors were powered by hydraulic motors that constantly malfunctioned. Imagine trying to get out of your car and realizing the doors won't open because the hydraulics died. And as for performance, it weighed like a tank, but only had a 175 horsepower V8 engine. This meant that instead of a sleek, high-performance sports car, it drove like a sofa on wheels. DeLorean DMC-12. Let's be frank, the DeLorean DMC-12 is one of the most famous cars of all time, largely thanks to its appearance in the movie Back to the Future. But if you strip away that cinematic fame, you're left with a car that didn't really work well. Its stainless steel body looked cool, but it was extremely hard to keep clean, and made the car heavier than necessary. Under the hood, DeLorean decided to use a 130 horsepower V6 engine from Renault, Volvo, and Peugeot, meaning it had the power-to-weight ratio of a garden tractor. And let's not forget about the quality control issues. Early models were so poorly built that some couldn't even start off the assembly line. Despite its iconic design and advanced materials, the DMC-12 faced significant criticism for its poor performance and reliability, solidifying its reputation as a pioneering but flawed vehicle. If you could go back in time and witness one of these crazy prototypes on the road, which one would you choose and why? AMC Pacer. If you've ever wondered what it feels like to drive a goldfish bowl, I introduce the AMC Pacer. This car made being spacious a bad thing. AMC's idea was simple: create a compact car with a huge interior. But instead of just making a normal hatchback, they went overboard by designing a bubble-shaped car with insanely oversized windows, making passengers feel like they were trapped inside a giant magnifying glass. The Pacer was marketed as the first wide small car, a phrase that sounds as contradictory as its execution. It was too heavy for its size, largely due to all the glass. It was initially supposed to have a rotary engine, but AMC scrapped that idea at the last minute, leaving it with a weaker inline 6-cylinder engine instead. The Pacer looked like a melted jelly bean in the sun. And to make matters worse, one door was longer than the other for easier rear seat access, making it look even more unbalanced. BMW Isetta, 1955. The BMW Isetta 1955 is a unique chapter in automotive history. This microcar wasn't actually built by BMW. It was an Italian microcar that BMW licensed to produce to boost sales after World War II. But calling it a car is a bit of an exaggeration. It had a 12-horsepower single-cylinder engine. That's right, just 12 horsepower. That's about half the power of a decent lawnmower. And then there's the door. Instead of a conventional side door, the entire front of the car opened up, including the steering wheel. If you parked too close to a wall, congratulations, you were trapped in the car. The Isetta was also nicknamed the bubble car due to its distinctive appearance. With a length of just 2.29 meters and a width of 1.37 meters, the Isetta featured an egg-shaped body with bubble-like windows. Inside, the car had a single bench seat, comfortably accommodating 2 people, with space behind for a spare wheel or a large luggage shelf. A surprising safety feature was the canvas sunroof, designed as an escape route in case of a collision. Despite its practical attributes and urban maneuverability, the BMW Isetta divided opinions due to its unique appearance, resembling a bug with its rounded shape and bubble windows. Triumph TR7. British sports cars have always been a gamble. Some were incredible and others were, well, like the Triumph TR7. Triumph promised that TR7 would be the future of British roadsters, but instead, it became a case study in how to ruin a car brand. First, its styling was weird. The TR7 had a clumsy wedge shape with a hood that looked too long for its tiny body. But maybe it drove well? Absolutely not. The TR7 was slow, unreliable, and so poorly built that it literally fell apart. Its electrical system was terrible, the engine constantly overheated, and worst of all, it rusted faster than you could drive it. The Triumph TR7, no matter how promising, could not be salvaged if quality and performance were not guaranteed. Aston Martin Lagonda. Aston Martin is known for building luxurious, high-performance, and beautiful cars. But in 1982, they decided to go into full-blown disaster mode with the Lagonda. This was a car so complex that even dealership mechanics couldn't understand it. Instead of conventional gauges, Aston Martin decided to use a digital dashboard with touch-sensitive controls. Sounds cool, right? Well, in the 1980s, digital dashboards were as unreliable as a paper umbrella. The electrical system constantly failed, and most owners couldn't even read the screens because they were too dim. Even the simplest repairs required specialized parts, and since almost nothing worked properly, you were basically paying a fortune for a car that barely functioned. Ford Pinto. The Ford Pinto is one of the biggest disasters in American automotive history. Ford's goal was to create an affordable subcompact car to compete with the rising wave of Japanese imports. But in their rush to make it as cheap as possible, they cut a few corners, and that corner cutting meant they created a potential death trap that could explode. The Pinto's fuel tank was placed in the worst possible position, right behind the rear bumper. And Ford, knowing this was a huge safety risk, decided not to fix it because it would cost an extra $11 per car. Instead, they figured it would be cheaper to pay out lawsuits than redesign the fuel system. Building a silly car is one thing, but building a car that actively tries to kill you is something else entirely. General Motors Le Sabre. In the 1950s, car manufacturers were obsessed with jet-inspired design. And General Motors took that obsession to a new level with the GM Le Sabre, a car that looked like it should be flying in the sky instead of driving on the road. GM engineers poured every futuristic idea they could think of into this car. It had a wraparound windshield, tail fins, and a front end that resembled a fighter jet intake. Under the hood was a supercharged V8 engine that could run on both gasoline and methanol, because clearly fuel efficiency wasn't a concern in the 50s. And let's not forget the automatic rain sensor. If it started to rain, the Le Sabre's convertible top would close itself. Sounds great, except this was 1951, and electrical systems at the time weren't exactly reliable. Marcos Montes, 1970. You'd think that by the 1970s, sports car companies would have figured out what made a desirable car. Good looks, great handling, and plenty of power. Marcos, a company known for building quirky but capable British sports cars, took a wrong turn in 1970. The Mantis was a massive, overstyled Grand Tourer that looked like a mutant fish on wheels. Power came from a Triumph inline six-cylinder engine, which wasn't bad, except it wasn't fast enough to match the car's aggressive looks. And that look, it had curves in the wrong places, a weird roofline, and simply mismatched proportions. Pontiac, Stinger. Pontiac thought the world needed a futuristic convertible off-road vehicle, so they built a concept car wrapped in bright neon blue and yellow plastic. This Stinger was a new concept in automotive design art. The seats could be pulled out and used as beach chairs. The sound system was also removable so you could play music outside. It even had a built-in cooler and surfboard storage. Sounds fun, right? Well, it was too impractical for mass production. The Stinger was not practical for daily driving, and people who actually wanted an off-road vehicle already had Jeeps and other off-road vehicles. So, Pontiac left this blindingly yellow disaster as a single concept car, and the world moved on. Ford GT90. The Ford GT90 sounded like the future of supercars. It had an insane 720 horsepower quad-turbo V12 engine, a top speed of 250 miles per hour, and a design that looked truly impressive. Ford built the GT90 as a concept car, but they hadn't really worked out all the details. The biggest problem was that its engine got so hot it could actually melt parts of the car. That's right, it turns out stuffing a quad-turbo V12 engine under the hood without proper cooling was a bad idea. Ford never intended to mass-produce the GT90, but that didn't stop people from asking for one. Unfortunately, it remained a single concept car, and Ford abandoned the idea in favor of something a little more practical. Renault Avantime. The Renault Avantime was an attempt to create a unique and exciting luxury minivan. This is the Renault Avantime, a car that was supposed to be a coupe. Instead of 4 doors like a typical van, it had 2 large, heavy coupe doors, making entry and exit a nightmare. And while most minivans focused on practicality, the Avantime sacrificed all of that for style. In the end, it was too impractical for families, too slow for car enthusiasts, and too weird for everyone. Nash Rambler, 1950 to 1955. The Nash Rambler is widely recognized as America's first successful compact car. Developed by Nash Kelvinator Corporation, its design reflected a peculiar blend of automotive and appliance influences. While Nash engineers focused on technical aspects, the car's styling bore the distinct imprint of Kelvinator's expertise in refrigerators. The Rambler was introduced in 1949, featuring a distinctive bathtub-shaped body with enclosed wheels, initially used on larger Nash models. However, when adapted for the smaller Rambler, this feature appeared clumsy. The enclosed front wheels and the car's rounded shape gave it a quirky, almost toy-like appearance, which did not resonate with American consumers accustomed to associating size with status and quality in automobiles. The Rambler carved out a niche as the first successful modern American compact car, designed to be smaller than its contemporaries, yet comfortably accommodating up to 5 passengers. Under the hood, the Rambler boasted a reliable Nash 172.6 cubic inch 6-cylinder engine, producing 82 horsepower. It rode on a 100-inch wheelbase and offered both manual and automatic transmission options. Studebaker Starlight Coupe, 1947 to 1955. Designed by Virgil Exner, who previously worked at Raymond Loewy Associates, the Starlight Coupe adopted the Ponon style that became popular after World War II. What made the Starlight Coupe memorable was its unconventional appearance, often likened to seeing 2 cars traveling in opposite directions simultaneously. This effect was largely due to its long trunk lid resembling a hood, reminiscent of an aircraft's nose. However, its most striking feature was its wraparound rear window, a departure from traditional design norms of the time. Unlike other vehicles with separate side windows, the Starlight Coupe boasted a panoramic effect achieved through 4 fixed glass panels, leading observers to question its direction of travel. Under the hood, the Starlight Coupe rode on a 113-inch wheelbase and was equipped with an L-head inline 6-cylinder engine, producing 85 horsepower at 4,000 RPM. It also featured an innovative Studebaker automatic transmission, ensuring smooth shifts, and 4-wheel hydraulic disc brakes for reliable stopping power. Nash Healey, 1950 to 1954. The Nash Healey 1952 was a unique collaboration between the American automaker Nash Kelvinator and the British Donald Healey Motor Company. This partnership, which began in 1950 and lasted until 1954, aimed to create a distinctive luxury sports car, combining American power with British craftsmanship. Initially equipped with Nash's Ambassador drivetrain, the Nash Healey featured a chassis and initial body designed by Healey. However, its most notable transformation came in 1952, when the renowned Italian designer Battista Pininfarina was brought in to restyle it. Farina's influence on the Nash Healey's design was significant but also controversial. The aluminum-bodied Roadster received a lower one-piece windshield and distinctive rear wheel arches. However, it was the new grille and headlights that garnered the most attention. Set deep within the front fenders, these features gave the Nash Healey an unusual appearance, leading some to liken it to a car swallowing another car. Despite its polarizing aesthetics, the Nash Healey was recognized for its track performance, notably winning its class at the prestigious 24 Hours of Le Mans race in 1952 and finishing third overall, behind only Ferrari and Talbot. Under the hood, the Nash Healey boasted 2 engine options throughout its production. Earlier models from 1951 to 1952 were equipped with a Nash Dual Jetfire OHV inline 6-cylinder engine, producing 125 horsepower from 234.8 cubic inches. Buick Special 1954. The 1954 Buick was part of the second generation of Buick's special models, produced from 1949 to 1955. During this period, Buick gained recognition for its elegant styling and powerful engines. Mid-50s Buick models were considered some of General Motors' most beautiful vehicles, featuring distinctive details like stylish portholes on the front fenders and smoothly curved rear wheel arches. However, the front-end design of the 1954 models received mixed reviews, often criticized for its drooping headlight bezels and a somewhat scowling grille. These elements contributed to a unique, if slightly mournful, appearance, leading some to humorously compare the car to Marvin the Paranoid Android from science fiction. Despite criticism of its front-end styling, the Buick Special 1954 had its strengths. It offered a variety of body styles, including sedans, coupes, and convertibles, catering to different buyer preferences and needs at the time. Under the hood, it featured a Fireball V8 engine with a displacement of 264 cubic inches, producing approximately 143 horsepower. This engine choice provided sufficient power for locomotion, combined with an automatic transmission that enhanced the user-friendly driving experience. Buick reacted quickly to this feedback. By 1955, the design of Buick models featured significant improvements, particularly in the front-end styling. Edsel 1958. Designed during the mid-1950s, the Edsel 1958 stood out for its controversial appearance, even in a decade known for bold styling. Despite the prevailing preference for strong designs, the Edsel faced severe criticism, especially for its front-end design. Whether the larger Citation and Corsair models or the smaller Ranger and Pacer variants, all Edsel models featured a distinctive, widely derided vertical front grille and widely spaced headlights. The public compared it to a horse collar, while privately its appearance received even less flattering comparisons. The car's profile, particularly noticeable in the convertible variant, raised eyebrows due to its proportions, fueling speculation about its structural integrity. The Edsel's large, bulging side panels contributed to its distinctive yet cumbersome appearance. Beyond aesthetic issues, the Edsel also faced build quality problems, further contributing to its notoriety. The combination of design flaws and manufacturing challenges contributed to its rapid decline in popularity. Although offering various engine options, including a V8 for power and a more economical 6-cylinder variant, the Edsel failed to attract consumers. Ultimately, its production run lasted only 3 years. Hope you had some interesting moments on this journey. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Back to Yesterday to discover more beautiful memories from the past. Thank you for watching until now. See you on the next adventure.